Hello, doston. This will be my sixth or I guess seventh session on this the psychology book, and yeah. So we'll start. So hey everyone, today we are diving into some pretty deep ideas about what shapes our personalities, and we are connecting it all with some fascinating historical figures like Napoleon and philosophers like Kierkegaard. So, ready? Let's jump in. So, let's start with Napoleon. We all know him as a military genius who conquered most of the Europe. But did you know that his ambition may have led him to lose sight of his true self? Yes. Kierkegaard, a Danish philosopher, would say that Napoleon, in his quest to become something greater, an emperor, he abandoned his real self. And here is that thing. Even when Napoleon succeeded in becoming an emperor, he was still in despair because he wasn't being true to what he really was. According to Kierkegaard, many people feel despair when they try to become something they are not. It's like trying on a mask and hoping it will fit, but in reality, it just makes you more uncomfortable and distant from your true self. Kierkegaard described different level of despairs. The lowest level come from ignorance. Basically, you have the wrong idea about you, who you really are, but you don't even realize it. Sounds kind of harmless, right? Well, it is not quite. As you become more self-aware, that ignorance turns into a deeper level of despair, where you actually dislike your true self. We'll give you a very simple example. Imagine failing an exam you worked so hard for. Sure, you have bummed about the grade, but Kierkegaard would say that what you are really upset about is yourself, the version of you that failed. And when you can't accept that part of yourself, that is where true despair kicks in. So, but don't worry, it's not all doom and gloom. Kierkegaard believed that the way out of despair is to have the courage to be your true self. Stop trying to be someone else, whether it's the perfect student, a great leader, or even an emperor like Napoleon. Just be you. And that is the opposite of despair. Now let's shift gears a little and talk about nurture versus nature or nature versus nurture. This debate is all about what makes us who we are. Is it our genes, our nature, or is it our upbringing and environment, our nurture? Francis Galton, who was actually related to Charles Darwin, was the first to break down this idea. He thought our personality and abilities were mostly shaped by nature, meaning they were inherited from our families. He even studied family trees of successful people like scientists and leaders to show how talent seems to run in families. But Galton did not totally dismiss nurture. He said that while we inherit traits from our family, these traits need to be nurtured through education and experience. To really test this idea, he studied twins, and what he found was very surprising. Galton discovered that twins are either extremely similar or extremely different. There is no middle ground. And what is even more interesting is that their upbringing did not seem to change these differences. So Galton concluded that nature plays a bigger role than we thought. Of course, the debate did not end there. Today, psychologists agree that it's not just nature or nurture, but a complex interaction between the two. Yes, we are born with certain abilities and tendencies, but the environment where we grow up in is just as important in shaping who we become. So, whether it's Napoleon struggling with ambition, Kierkegaard talking about despair, or Galton analyzing the twins, the bigger takeaway is that we are all a mix of our genetic traits and our life experiences. I'll tell you a very simple story. It's all about a person named as John. John was always a curious guy. He was very smart and driven. Growing up, his family had big dreams for him, especially his dad, who wanted him to become a doctor. John tried very, very hard to live up to these expectations of his father. He studied late into the night, attended a lot of extra classes, pushed himself to be the best student he could be. One day, the results of an important medical entrance came out. John didn't pass. He was crushed, his mind swirled with thoughts like, what will my parents say? Am I a failure? I'll never be good enough. He wasn't just upset about the exam, he felt like he had failed as a person. John didn't know who he was anymore. All he had ever known was this dream of becoming a doctor, and now that dream was gone. John was stuck in what Danish philosopher Kierkegaard called as despair, a feeling that comes when you are not living as your true self. You see, John wasn't just upset about failing an exam. Deep down, he had been trying to become someone he wasn't meant to be. He realized that he never truly wanted to be a doctor, it was what others wanted for him. Kierkegaard explained that when we live life pretending to be someone else, it creates despair. And that is exactly what happened to John. He had spent so much time trying to fit into a mold that someone else created for him, he lost sight of what he truly was. This is where the nature versus nurture debate comes in. Galton suggests that John's situation was shaped by both his genetic makeup, which is his nature, and the environment he grew up, which is the nurture. So let's break this down. John was always a deep thinker, someone who loved learning about the world and understanding the people. Maybe this was just part of who he was, something passed down through his family. But John was grew up in an environment where being a doctor was seen as the highest achievement. His parents, friends, and even his teachers constantly praised those who chose that path. This shaped how he viewed success and pushed him into chasing something that wasn't really aligned with his true self. John's inner conflict was result of these two forces, his natural curiosity and desire to explore versus the pressure from the environment to become a doctor. Galton would say that both nature and nurture are important. Both nature and nurture are important, and this particular nature sets the limit on how far we can go in developing certain abilities. After a long walk and some deep thinking, John realized something important. He didn't have to become a doctor to be successful or happy. He could still pursue his love for learning in other ways. Maybe he would study psychology or philosophy instead, uh, fields where he could explore the deeper questions about life and people, the things that naturally fascinated him. John decided to stop chasing a dream that was not his. He made peace with who he truly was, and in doing so, he found relief from the despair. He wasn't trying to live up to anyone else's expectations anymore. He was just being John, and that was enough. Kierkegaard would say that this is the key to escaping despair, to accept your true self. Once John embraced who he really was, he found a sense of purpose and calm that had been missing before. In the end, John's journey teaches us that it is very important to balance our nature which is our inborn traits, with the pressures and influences of nurture, which is like the environment where we grow in. But most importantly, it reminds us that happiness comes from being true to who we are, not from trying to become someone we are not. I hope this particular story has given you an idea about whatever theoretical narration that I did. So, if you really like this particular video, kindly go like, share, and subscribe. Don't forget to hit the bell icon and stay tuned for more interesting videos on this particular The Philosophy book.